one of the arguments of the book is that indeed interpersonal racism is on a decline. I mean, I had a good time on this journey. I went hunting, I went fishing, I went to church, and et cetera, et cetera. I fully integrated myself in the community. But what I also did not find is that structural racism is not on a decline. And what the book documents is the structural forces, the policies, the institutions that keep our country as segregated today as it was in 1970. And so one of the main points of the book is, on the one hand, it's a travelogue. This is my experience traveling to these places: Georgia, Utah, Idaho, the whitest, fastest growing communities in America. But on the other hand, it sort of exposes how we have segregation in this day. In other words, how segregation doesn't require prejudice or ill will or animus necessarily. And so I talk about the intent doctrine. You can have animus or prejudice or segregation without any intent. So how do we move forward? And towards the end of the clip, what we would have seen is, how do these issues play out now that we have a black president? And one of the arguments is that they're unrelated. In other words, even with a black president, we are still dealing with these matters, and potentially it could even be worse in the sense that these issues may get swept under the rug. And finally, I'll say what we're seeing in the news today is a shakedown of a Whitopia versus an abomination. Abomination we could call a country that is multicultural, happy with its diversity, but still residentially segregated. And then we have Whitopia, these enclaves that I talk about, where immigration is a big fear, high taxes are a big fear, there's a lot of hatred towards the public sector and public spending. And I have to point out that there's a history behind this. There's a backstory. In other words, throughout the 1960s, a lot of Americans vacated the public sector in a very literal way. They vacated the public schools. They vacated the public parks once these places became integrated. And so this animus we're seeing, small government, no public sector, we're not going to support those mooches and freeloaders, has always had a racial component to it. And I'll read a quick quote from USA Today in one of the anti-healthcare reform rallies. And this is a gentleman speaking who says, and this is in USA Today, "I'm really upset about what's happening in this country. This guy's name is Jim Caddis. He's 60 years old. He's in Dover, New Hampshire. Quote, "I'm really upset about what's happening in this country. I contend that the health plan would cover illegal immigrants, cut Medicare, and lead to rationing. The Democratic plans do call for cuts in Medicare spending, but wouldn't cover illegal immigrants." That's USA Today talking. "I feel that this administration is subverting the Constitution on the same levels as Richard Nixon." So as we talk more about healthcare reform, as we talk about immigration reform, we are seeing the same ideological battles between a small government, low tax, screw the public sector, right wing on one side, versus a more inclusive, pro-public space, pro-public sector on the other hand.